welcome to episode 10 of Off the Shelf, the half-termly library vlog. I am Mr. Humphreys.
And I am Miss Oliver.
Alright, and so let's start off with some recommendations that we have in the library for years 7 to 9. So first up we've got The Storm Swimmer by Claire Wares. Now this is a sort of unconventional book. It's a bit of an urban fantasy, and it features a girl, Janika. Now her parents are sort of going through some financial difficulties and woes, and they packed her off to live with her grandparents by the seaside, which is not the most exciting thing for an 11-year-old girl to be put through. And she ends up, she meets a boy called Perry, and she ends up getting drawn into sort of like this sort of magical underwater world. Now he's a boy from the sea. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a mermaid. He's not like a little mermaid. He's just someone who is very adaptable and can just like swim through the sea quite easily and quite naturally. And there's, she gets drawn into this wonderful world, and she finds that actually she is quite happy if she can just have some freedom and some independence. But then the realities of the human world begin to intrude on the magical little world that they've built for themselves, and so she has to make some hard choices. So it's it's a sense of wonder permeates it, but it's also a sort of a high stakes thriller as well. And so, any fans of Nazrana Farouk out there, or maybe Lauren St. John, who sort of deal with similar things, this could be the book for you. So that's the first one. Now, next up, we have The Night Animals by Sarah Ann Jux. Now, on this humble library vlog, we have earmarked books that we think are going to be the next big thing, and authors who are going to be the next big thing, and that includes October. We did mention that in an earlier episode, and that went on to win the Carnegie Medal. Now, I have high hopes that this one might sort of follow in the same footsteps. So, this is about a girl called Nora, and her mum has been diagnosed with PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. So, she's going through a tough time at home, and to help her navigate the fallout, she sort of encounters some night animals of the title. Now, these night animals are sort of beautiful, rainbow-coloured, shimmering, mystical, magical animals, and they take her on an adventure. And the key to that adventure is that it might help her, provide her with a key to unlock the trauma of her mum, and with it help her family. So now she's going through a painful time, so there is quite a lot of heartbreak in the story, but there is real hope in the story too, and there's a sort of very strong and uplifting underlying message here that asking for help from others when times are tough can be very transformative, very helpful to go through. So definitely worth seeking out. So like I said, I hope this is going to be the next big thing.
Sounds really good.
So next big thing, possibly. You heard it here first. Exclusive. And then last but not least, I've got Philosophy for Teens by Elizabeth Day. Now this is adapted by Elizabeth Day from her best-selling books series for adults, How to Fail. And now we're always giving messages, aren't we, all the time about how failing is important. It's the first attempt in learning. It's your chance to bounce back and what you learn from it. Now all that sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But what about on day-to-day practice? How do I actually do that on an everyday basis? So what this book does, it sort of breaks things down in a sort of very user-friendly chunks, if you like, using graphics, and it serves as a handbook that separates things into several different principles of failure, or 7 rather, ranging from, for example, rejection is survivable to you are not your worst thoughts. So taking those as the principles of failure, and then it gives you a sort of how-to from that, and it's very, I don't know why we can see this, but you can see it's very, very accessible, very, very user-friendly, great layout, yeah, absolutely, great layout, great content. So it draws upon experience of the author herself, Elizabeth Day, but also celebrity guests. And the idea is that these will, as I said, on a day-to-day help you to sort of reframe your negative thoughts, to sort of build up your resilience, and then how to deal with failure when life throws you its inevitable curveballs. So, Philosophy for Teens is my last recommendation.
Wish I'd had that when I was younger.
Well, don't we all? Don't we all? I mean, it's a good handbook, so don't miss it. Okay, over to you, Miss Oliver.
Okay, so I have the recommendations for 10 to 13-year-olds, and I'm going to kick off with non-fiction. So I've got here Michael Rosen's book, and as an author and poet, he's a national treasure. So I was quite intrigued when I saw that he'd written this memoir. So the full title is Life Lessons on Going Under, Getting Over It and Getting Through It, which is quite obviously a link to his fantastic child's book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt, which I think probably most people know of.
It's probably his most famous one, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So it's a very honest and moving reflection of his personal trauma and grief, as well as his investigation asking how we find joy in life and how we get through when we're in dark times or after dark times.
Yeah.
But his sense of humour really shines through as well. So he does things like he writes, he loves inventing syndromes. So one of those that he's invented is the alternate day syndrome, where it describes how he exercises one day and then the following day he will just spend on the sofa.
We all need sofa days.
Yes, yeah. And the book is actually billed, in the front cover it says, it's an essential companion for anyone who has loved and lost or struggled and survived. And that's happened to more than any of us, really, than you might think. So once you start talking to people, you realise just how many people have been through various things. So a really good read.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're right, he is a national treasure. So.
Okay, my first fiction book is The Mysterious Case of the Alton Angels, quite a long title, by Janice Hallett. I chose this book because I really enjoyed the second book by Janice Hallett, The Twyford Code. And I know that Mr. Humphreys really enjoyed her first book, The Appeal.
Yeah, definitely loved that one.
So, and I also loved it, I was drawn to this because it's written about a true crime story. And it's the Alton Angels, which was about a cult, a murder case that happened 18 years ago in northwest London. So that in itself was very intriguing. So it's a labyrinthine laden and full of twists and turns kind of mystery, and it's about how an author and a journalist combine resources to try and find out what actually happened all those years ago and find out more about the cult behind it. So they face no end of dead ends, obfuscation at every twist and turn, and they just get dragged deeper and deeper into it. So it sounds really good. And in true Janice Hallett style, it's written, not in the normal way, but through emails, interviews, book extracts, WhatsApp messages. So just like her previous two books, but almost both combined, really. So a really interesting format to be written in.
Yeah.
Which I think also really adds to the realism of feeling of the book. And it says on the front cover, Agatha Christie for the 21st century. And as a fan of Agatha Christie, I would definitely agree with that.
She's the queen of crime, Agatha Christie, so maybe Janice Hallett is the queen of modern crime, 21st century crime.
Definitely,
Fiction. Fiction, not crime. No one's claiming that.
No. And my final fiction book, is She and Her Cat, the Japanese bestseller by Makoto Shinkai and Nakura Nagakawa. That's it.
Well done, Miss Solver.
I did practice that and I still stumbled over it. So I was drawn to this book because I love cats. I have a calico cat called Millie who is beautiful. So the cat on the front drew me straight away. So this book was inspired by Shinkai's short film and manga by the same name, which is quite unusual because it's usually the book that comes first, followed by the film. And it focuses on the connection between humans and felines, and it's told through a series of vignettes that happen in the outskirts of Tokyo in Japan. And there's a chapter called Slumber and Sky, and there are little illustrations as well like this that go with it. And this is about a person she's a manga fan. She shuts herself away after the tragic death of a friend. But it's her cat, Cookie, that hatches a plan to get her back out in the world again and back living.
Super cats.
Yeah. And the cats actually speak in it. So it might sound a bit strange, but I think it's a great concept. So I just love the idea of the local cats weaving through the lives of these people, through their homes, their lives, through difficult times and just being there to help them. So it's a really heartwarming story, several different stories in fact.
Collection, okay.
Yeah.
I believe as well, the first, what was it again, Nagoto Shinkai, I believe she's the author of Convenience Store.
Yeah, she is, yeah.
Which, very, very big bestseller.
Yeah,
and this sounds like it's
popular.
not too dissimilar, so if you like that, could be one to check out. Definitely.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Miss
That's
Oliver.
my 3.
Thank you very much. Okay, some very good, very interesting choices as always. This episode. Right, next up we're going to talk about the off-the-shelf classic. Now, this episode we're going to talk about the Amulet of Samarkand by Jonathan Stroud. Now, the reason that we've singled this one out is that the adaptation of Lockwood and Co, but also by Jonathan Stroud, is on our screens by Netflix, and we thought we'd sort of like draw your attention to this because there are some overlaps with it. It is set in modern London, just like Lockwood and Co, and kind of similar, maybe a bit Northern Lights in that this modern version of London is like ruled over by a sort of powerful set of magicians. But there's more to it than that. It's enough to sort of differentiate it from those sort of things. First of all, it's actually very, very funny. It's got a likeable protagonist. His name is Nathaniel. And what he does, he summons a genie, which is a sort of Eastern kind of genie, to do his bidding, because he has been sort of humiliated by a sort of ruthless magician, whose name I can't remember, and he wants to get his revenge. So he summons this genie to do that. He's a young, up-and-coming magician who has ambitions, but of course this genie is mischievous, and so there are sort of like... Oh, of course they are. Of course they are. And anyone could say we shouldn't have dabbled in this. But in doing this, there are quite funny consequences. So it's a kind of hybrid of, so I've already mentioned Northern Lights, but it's also reminiscent. Well, first of all, you could compare it to Dr. Faustus, the idea of selling yourself to the devil and selling it to do your bidding. So that's the serious side, but it's also very reminiscent of Terry Pratchett's Discworld, which is also a very sort of comical fantasy series, but very tongue-in-cheek. And also, actually, it does predate it, so perhaps I can't prove this for certain, but it could also perhaps have influenced the Percy Jackson books, because there's obviously that's all like Greek gods, but they all have powers, and there's a school for half-bloods, so they call it in Percy Jackson, and so there's sort of echoes of that here as well, and this predates it. This actually came out in 2003, so he has been writing for a long time. He might have suddenly made it big now with Lockwood and Co, but he has been writing for some time, has Jonathan Stroud. So as this testifies, there's a lot of stuff in his back catalogue. We got loads of his books here, but this is the one to start with, I would say, for anyone who's like coming new or knows him via the Lockwood and Co series. So yeah, if you are a fan of Lockwood and Co, definitely want to check out. So there we go. Okay. Right, so next up it's time for our special guest. Now we have our first student guest of the year, and she is a friend of the library. She's in here all the time, and she's a regular at LitSoc, and it's Lulu Beale. So let's hand over to Lulu Beale to find out some about her reading habits.
I read A Kind of Spark by Elle McNichol a few weeks ago during my mock exams, actually, as a kind of like catharsis, please get me out of here book to read, and I read it all in one go and I just absolutely loved it. It's about an autistic girl who has a special interest on witches, and it's her like fight to get them recognised in her small Scottish town, and I really enjoyed reading about the passion behind this girl's journey, and I loved all the characters. I love that even though it's a middle grade book, it's a perfect example of a middle grade book that you shouldn't put down just for being middle grade. I think everyone should read middle grade. It's really important, and I think especially this one, and I know there's a sequel that's just come out as well, so yeah, can't wait to read that one. So I think The Ransom of Dawn by Siobhan Dad would make a really, really good either movie or TV series. I'll get into that in a minute. But it's about a village in which if you have a 13th child, when that child turns 13, they get sacrificed. And this follows the girl on the night before she gets sacrificed. And it's a very, very short book, which is kind of part of the reason I want it to be a movie or TV show. And I think it would just be amazing to find out what happens next. I won't give any spoilers, but it's a really interesting ending. Lots of twists and turns, and I think, unfortunately Siobhan Dahl's not with us anymore, but I think it would give a movie or TV show with a really talented writer could expand this universe. Why do they sacrifice his child? Who is Donned? What's going on here? I think it would be really cool. I think a movie would be good if it was like, it's kind of snappy, short. I think it could be like less expansion, but I think with the TV show especially, we can find out what happens to this girl after that night, what happens before, why did this all happen in general, so I think it could be really good. I think the book that I find that's overrated is Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks, and I'm assuming you still do this project, but at some point you might do a war book project where you do your own like individual-led project about war books, and you do creative responses and essay responses as well. For mine, I did Birdsong, which is a very chunky book. I don't have it with me, but it's about 600 pages or longer, and I just when I opened the first page, it's just a slog. The teacher who taught me in Year 8 is now, Year 9 actually, the teacher who taught me is now left, but I will say that I didn't finish the whole book. I still did fine on the project, but it was just a slog. I thought the main character was so unsympathetic and so boring, and just very male gaze that I don't really enjoy. It just is this specific type of male gaze. I won't spoil it. If you do care to read it, I wouldn't recommend it. It's about it's set during World War I and also set a bit during the modern day, but I can't give too much away without spoiling, but it's about a soldier, a bit of romance, a bit of scandal. Usually I would really enjoy all of those things, but this particular mix of those things I did not like. I think mine's going to be more author-centric, but this is one of her books. It's called We Come Apart, and it's partly written by Sarah Crossan. And I feel like it's a bit of heresy to call Sarah Crossan obscure, but I haven't heard many people talk about her, and I really like her. So she's done prose books, but lots of her books are written in verse like this. And these were like the first ever verse books that I'd read, and they inspired me to write ones of my own. And so it really got me into poetry, because I was like, wow, poetry is not just consider the lily and like look at all of these fields with nothing in them. It actually can be used to tell a really good story, and a really good YA story as well. So this one is about a refugee and a delinquent girl falling in love. So I really like this one, but my favourite of hers is One, which I'm pleased to see is actually taken out of the library at the moment, but it's about conjoined twins and how they deal with that, and especially as they get older and their condition becomes more serious. But yeah, written in verse, really punchy, succinct, good verse. I really enjoy her writing. Every time she has another book out, I snatch it up. Yeah, would really recommend. I'm going to be very strategic about this, and I've been thinking about it a lot, but I think the first one that I would choose is Sinclair's by Enid Blyton, and that is, you might know Mallory Towers by Enid Blyton, but my favourite is Sinclair's by Enid Blyton, and it's basically the same. It's a boarding school story, very fancy midnight feast, stuff like that, shenanigans. I really loved these books when I was littler, and I used to read them all night. I had a big box set of books that all had the same illustrations of them, and I just loved them, and I just liked imagining that I would be in this boarding school with all these people and get up to midnight feast and stuff like that. So I think it's the one that I could read over and over and over again, and I wouldn't get bored of it. I think there were other contenders for that particular slot, like Hetty Feather by Jacqueline Wilson, but I think this one is the true victor, just because of how many scenarios I can picture myself in these books. My second one, this is a bit controversial. I've spoken to some people who don't like this book, but it's The Thursday Murder Club by Rachel Osman. I know it's another celebrity book, but I just really like it. It's not very difficult to read, so I think it would be kind of my leisurely lying on the sand thinking of how I can escape book. And I think actually this book could help me escape because of how detectory it is, and it follows 4 senior citizens at a retirement home solving a murder, which obviously is an amazing concept, but it's these 4 people. They're really distinct, lovable characters. It's got a really genuinely intriguing plot, and 2 sequels after this if you fancy it, but I don't think I can bring those as well. But I could also read this over and over again, but I think just reading it again with fresh eyes and discovering the plot would be really good, and I really like finding out where these characters started versus where they are now in the 3rd book. I just think I'd really enjoy that. But yeah, that is my second book. Now, this first one, this might be a bit snobby, but I've got the complete works of William Shakespeare, and this is my most tactical move, right? Because I think if I was on this desert island, hypothetically it might take me 6 days to starve to death, right? But I think I could get through those 2 books quick, but this would take me a while. And I think if I did end up staying alive from some genius stroke of survivability that I don't actually have, I think I could read this again, because I could read it first with fresh eyes, then to like analyse it, and then to like set it myself, act out all the characters, cast all the turtles and the starfish as all of the characters, and I think that would be a really good use of my time, especially if I was on a desert island. So that's why I'd be bringing this. Might be a bit heavy if I was trying to escape, but I could use it as like a raft, I think, and I think that would be a good idea. Yeah, that's my third book.
Thank you very much to Lulu. Okay, so we're going to go on to our fun fact trivia now. So today's fun fact is about Roald Dahl. He's very recently been in the news due to some of the language being removed from his books.
Yep.
And as a child, he was a chocolate taster for Cadbury. And of course, this may well have been the inspiration behind his famous book about a certain chocolate factory.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sounds
there you go.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
What a lucky guy. I'd like that job.
Yes.
Who wouldn't like that
yeah,
job?
who wouldn't? Yeah, yeah, great. Okay, and now it's on to competition time for the Who's Reading competition. So, Mr. Humphreys, would you like to do the honours today?
Thank you, Miss Oliver. I'll just give it a bit of a shake. So let's see who has won the Who's Reading competition this time. And our winner is Emily in Year 7. So well done, Emily.
Well done.
A chocolate bar is coming your way. So that's
chocolate.
yeah, indeed. So more chocolate, as you said. So okay, now who's reading this time? So tell us, who's reading? Okay, so as always, if you just want to either enter your competition entry into the competition entry box or email us at sslibrarianteam@servantline.com and we will announce the winner in the next video. So that brings episode 10 to a close. So until next time, take care and keep reading. Bye.
Bye.